Hey guys, Leanne here on Grady's Mom, back with a new week of what I cooked for dinner. Starting off on this night, I did some sheet pan, sausage, peppers, onions, and roasted potatoes. I just put them all on a lined baking sheet. I tossed them in some light EVOO, salt and pepper, and I just roasted everything together at 375 for roughly like 35 minutes. I did toss everything halfway just to make sure like the potatoes and the edges of the sausage got crispy, and it was really easy and delicious. The next night here, I made some meatloaf. I do my meatloaf the same pretty much almost every time. So I've got a pound of lean ground beef. I've got a whole onion, but a small one large egg, some panko breadcrumbs, and a little bit of salt and a little bit of cracked black pepper. You could, of course, do this with chicken or ground turkey if you're not a fan of red meat. And, of course, if you're not a fan of onion, you could skip the onion or use much less. I just prefer a really oniony consistency in my meatloaf. I usually use rubber gloves when I'm making meatloaf so the meat doesn't get like stuck underneath my nails and make a huge mess, but I just put the meatloaf, I kind of press it into a loaf pan, just a regular baking loaf pan. I do spray it with a little bit of cooking spray, and this night I was using some Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce on top because I really like to put like a glaze on top of my meatloaf. I know kind of the old school way is doing it with ketchup, which is great, but I like to do it with barbecue sauce too. It just adds a little bit of like spice and tang. And then I just take like a basting brush and brush the whole loaf so it gets fully coated and everything gets kind of evenly distributed, and it just makes such a nice glaze and flavor on top. I absolutely love it. So I wanted to go ahead and use up some sweet potatoes that I had. You'll see me use them again in another video or another clip this week because I had an abundance of them. So since they had the same cook time as the meatloaf, I just went ahead and I poked some holes in them. I do this with regular potatoes as well. It just prevents them from exploding in the oven, which is a real thing that can happen. And all I did with the sweet potatoes after I poked the holes is I physically rubbed them with a little bit of light EVOO, salt and pepper on all sides. It just makes the skin nice and crispy, and the salt and pepper kind of flavor it because I personally like to eat the actual potato skin. So here's a complete meal, that beautiful glaze on the meatloaf. The sweet potatoes were small, so my husband and I split 3 of them and each had 1.5, and some French cut green beans on the side. And on the sweet potatoes, I put some butter and some brown sugar, and it was absolutely delicious. So this next night coming up, I decided I really wanted to make a soup. So I've got just a small amount of lentils here because I didn't want a lentil soup, but I wanted the element of lentil in the soup. So I have some salted boiling water, and I just put my lentils in and just let them kind of simmer away for about 15 to 20 minutes just to take that like hard shell edge off. I've got about half a pound of ground Jimmy Dean pork sausage that I'm cooking off, and then I added some zucchini, some onion, and some garlic as well. And this was actually a crock pot soup, so I've got some diced fire roast tomatoes with a little bit of garlic flavor. I've got my semi-cooked lentils since they were going into the crock pot, and I added a 32-ounce container of chicken broth and all the elements I showed, and then I did add a handful of shredded Simply potatoes the last hour, and I did season with a bay leaves, some garlic, some crushed red pepper, some black pepper, and some oregano, and it was just a really hearty soup, but also very light at the same time. It was delicious, and this was actually a chilly night that we had this, so it definitely really hit the spot. The next night coming up is a definite favorite dish of mine that I actually have not made in a while. It's beef and cabbage. So I've got a half a head of shredded cabbage that I just shredded up, and the other half here is ready to go in the fridge for another recipe. I just sauteed up the shredded cabbage and a little bit of EVOO, again, some lean ground beef, some onion and garlic, and to flavor it a little bit, I used some Worcestershire sauce, a lot of ground black pepper, and a little bit of crushed red pepper flake for some heat. It's a very simple dish, but I haven't made it in a long time, and it's really good every time I do. My husband really likes it, and he is not a fan of cabbage, but he really likes this dish. The next night coming up, I had a bunch of broccoli, so I cut up one of the crowns of broccoli and was getting ready to steam it. Again, the sweet potatoes. This is 2 large sweet potatoes that I just kind of sliced up. I do like to leave the skin on potatoes when I'm roasting. I like the crispy element that it gives. And I just toss these lightly in a little bit of light EVOO, simple salt and pepper, and that's it. And I just wanted to make sure the olive oil was coated on the potatoes. I had a whole bunch of Ritz crackers to use up, so I decided to make another recipe that I have not made in a long time. It's actually called Ritz Chicken. I'm pretty sure it's an old school recipe. Some of you might have heard of it. Some of you might have even made it before, but you pretty much use Ritz cracker. You just put it into a large or quart size or gallon size Ziploc bag, and then you want to crush up the Ritz to just form crumbs. You can use your hands. You can use like a tool. I've seen people use a rolling pin, whatever works for you. And you're going to use the Ritz cracker crumbs as like a coating on chicken. So I have some boneless, skinless chicken breast that I have prepped and taken all the fat off. I've got my assembly line set up with the flour, the egg, that's 2 large eggs beaten, and then I've got my Ritz cracker crumbs. It's okay if they're kind of coarse like that. I actually prefer it that way. So you're going to want to dip your chicken breast in the flour. Some people I've seen do a dish similar to this with like cornflake or just breadcrumb. And I've seen a lot of people skip the flour, which is totally fine. That's your preference. But I have noticed that the flour is really what makes the egg and the whatever coating you're using really stay on the meat when you actually go to eat it. I don't know if that makes sense, but the flour is definitely a crucial part. So you're going to do flour on both sides, egg on both sides, and then the coating on both sides. I've got a baking sheet already lined with parchment paper, and the chicken was perfect on there because it doesn't stick. Your tray doesn't get all messy. These were large chicken breasts, and I baked them at around 375 for about 30 to 35 minutes. The sweet potatoes roasted up really nicely, and the broccoli was all ready to go. I just added some butter and some salt and pepper. I really like this recipe a lot. I'm sure you could just Google it. It has a nice, rich, buttery flavor. And it's just a nice way to cook a chicken breast when you're kind of stuck in a rut of making the same exact recipes over and over with chicken breasts. Hey guys, I'm about to get dinner going. I had a little bit of a fail, but I'm gonna make it work. So I took out shrimp this morning, and as you can see, that's all there was in the package. The package was deceiving because it was wrapped 3 times in a heavy plastic and paper, so it felt like it was double this amount of shrimp. But as you can see, there's about a dozen shrimp here, which is clearly not going to be enough for Matt and I for dinner. However, I just discovered the issue because they were wrapped up all day thawing out. So even though it's not enough for dinner, I'm still going to make it because I'm not going to refreeze the shrimp. I just peeled and deveined it, and I'm actually going to do a baked stuffed shrimp using Ritz cracker again. When I made that chicken the other day, I noticed how many Ritz crackers I had left, and this is actually going to expire in December, so I want to make sure I work through them. So I just did the same thing. I crushed up the Ritz cracker. I have some finely minced celery and onion here. I'm going to saute up the crumbs with the celery, onion, and some butter, some seasonings, and then I'm just going to top each shrimp with the mixture and bake it. And since it's not enough, I'm going to obviously make sides, which I was going to anyways. I'm going to make some kind of a rice, and we're going to have side salads just to kind of bulk up the meal a bit. We'll probably have a little bit bigger of a side salad. But anyways, I'm going to get this filling going. This is a super easy recipe, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I sauteed up the celery and onion in some butter, and I did add a little splash of this Worcestershire sauce just for a little flavor and saltiness. And then I went ahead and added in the Ritz crumbs and just cooked them for a couple minutes until they got a little bit golden brown. I had the shrimp in a pie dish with a little bit of cooking spray on the bottom so nothing stuck. And then I went ahead and just put this kind of crumbly, buttery topping right on top of the shrimp. Doesn't have to be fancy at all. It doesn't have to be intricate. I just kind of topped all the shrimp, as well as I could, and then just pushed it down a little bit to flatten it out. Baked for 10 minutes, and then we're good to go. So we were trying this Olive Garden Parmesan Ranch. It was really good. I do prefer Hidden Valley, but it was a nice, nice change. And we had large side salads, and the dinner was great. The shrimp were really tender, and I just served it over the top of some rice pilaf. And with the salads, it was really, really good. I hope you enjoyed this week's What's for Dinner video. Thank you so much for watching. I do have an entire playlist of these videos linked down below in the description box from over the years. Have a great day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.